Well, yeah, the whole topic of conscience, especially when we're talking about that from a leadership context, it really does flow nicely from the whole ethics discussion that we were just last having, because really, I suppose the way that I see the conscience aspect of the leader, it is that part of us that is more aligned to our ethics and our choices. And so it's, the conscience is almost like that, that little bloke that sits on the shoulder that actually goes, is that really in alignment with your ethics? Is that really alignment with where we're going and what we're doing? And I suppose it's really just easy to see examples where I suppose, a lot of the things that we talk about, it always comes into, well, what are we aligned to? Where are we heading and what do we value? And we actually take that really seriously, and a core part of what we're doing is actually going, so who are we and what are we aligning to, and what is this initiative that we're doing, and what are we trying to, not only what are we trying to achieve and get out of it, but it's also, how we go about it is just as important as what we do. So how do we make sure that we are aligned to that? And we have all of the other principles in there, and conscience is a really important one, because it is that aspect of the leader that just actually goes, I'm aware of who I am, I'm aware of our purpose, I'm aware of our ethical approaches, I'm aware of what we value, and it's just that bit of us that when we can sit back and go, yeah, this feels like it's in alignment, or this is not. And I suppose we see it a lot, in the world today, where you can see that, there's many examples of whether it's business leaders or even political leaders or community leaders that either have a bit of a different alignment, and so that affects their conscience, just that bit that goes, wow, am I being true to who I am? Am I being true to what we're trying to do? And you can equally see how it plays out when that conscience is turned off. You can see many out there when the conscience is turned off, and it's almost like the conscience is also that part of us that actually it is open to exploring the consequence of our choice, and through that like assessment of consequence. If I do this, are we doing it in alignment with what we're doing? If I do this particular thing, am I actually going to risk the people that I'm working for? Am I going to risk the people that I'm working with? Am I going to risk the community? And so they're the sorts of things that start to play out. You can start to go, well, here's the ethical framework, and I can decide whether I'm in my ethics or not. But that conscience part of us is just that bit that sits there and actually goes, oh, but are we in alignment with that? It's like, yeah, okay, it feels like we are. And if we're not, well, then it's, hopefully it's that part of us that's been tuned to give us that feeling and that experience if something that we're even thinking of doing or contemplating might be a little bit off center. And hopefully that bit of us is tuned, and we're tuned to listen to it, to actually go, yeah, no, that doesn't feel right, does it? So let's not do that. And then I go back, you can see, you'll see examples out in the world today of what it looks like when that conscience is turned off. And that starts to look like very, like very short-term ignoring of maybe medium to long-term consequence of choices, very much still aligned to the self-interest type model, and then sitting there and actually going, well, let's make as much revenue as we can, let's make as much profit of that as we can, and let's do that irrespective of what we might feel in here. And I suppose at best you can just hope that some leaders are actually feeling that disconnect and actually going, oh God, it feels horrible, but I'm going to do it anyway. but then there's going to be some out that are actually going to be just so numb and have so disabled their conscience that they're just going to keep plowing forward, and they're not really going to consider the consequence of what they're doing, or the impact to the broader community, or to the planet. And I suppose you look at maybe some things, as global pandemics have has been the topic of the past couple of years on this planet. And you can look at some of the pharmaceutical companies that have actually said, well, you know what, we've come up with a version of a vaccine that will be good for everybody to use. And we recognize that we can either go down the path of extracting all the revenue and all of the profit that we possibly can out of this thing, and get ourselves into the rich list, or we can do we can actually go, well, this is actually a part of our community response, and yes, we're probably going to make a sustainable return, but we're going to go, well, we think that this is how much it's costing us to produce it. We think a reasonable margin on that would be this. And so therefore, we're going to actually give this to the community, but we're going to cap it at that. We're not actually going to ask for anything more than, like our costs plus a bit to, keep the company sustained.
Yeah.
And so it's at times like that, you start to see who's got a conscience and who doesn't.
Yeah.
Who's got it honed and who doesn't. And, and also through this time, we've also seen that there's certain industries and certain businesses that it's been a sweet spot for them. And all of a sudden, with so many industries are shut down and what revenue's gone, they're not making any money at all. And then there's others that are actually going, you know what, we don't know how we did this, but all of a sudden revenue is going through the roof because we're actually either an online business or we're in the distribution of, of goods and services, and we can do all of that. And the demand for distribution has gone through the roof. And so you're actually seeing now that there's some that are actually just going and getting richer than we've ever seen. And so you actually ask, well, where is your conscience in there? Where does that part of you actually go, yeah, there's what I get out of it, and there's what my company gets out of it, but there's, where does that sit within the good of the whole community and the good of the planet? I think that's the thing. So I think this is it's a good discussion to have, and you can start to see how some of these building blocks all come in. So we've got to have our alignment to community. We've actually got to look at ourselves in perspective of, well, we're on this particular planet, and and since the dawn of the industrial age, we've gone from, hundreds of millions of people on the planet to, now approaching 8 billion people on the planet. So the scale's gone like that. And it's like, wow, you look at the global picture of where we are, look at the community picture of where we are, and then we can say, well, we're actually all about delivering community responsible, sustainable initiatives so that we can actually foster evolution. Not just of humanity, but also of all the other kingdoms on the planet. And so you start putting that together with your ethics and starting to move from, qualities of like moving from, competition to collaboration. You put all of these sorts of things together and you actually start to build your almost like your own internal compass. There's another way I love to look at conscience. It's just that internal compass that actually says what, how am I going? It's yes, I've got my ethics that give me a framework to actually say, am I ethically aligned to what I'm doing? But the conscience is the compass. The conscience is the bit that sits in there. It's got the feeling, and it goes, yeah, actually, this feels really in alignment with it. Or, oh man, this doesn't.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel in alignment at all. So it's another part of that building block that we need to have on board. And it starts to become, it starts to become a lot more about this, because, we often talk about this, we're actually going to move from being so focused out there to actually getting our guidance from in here, and it's the conscience that is a huge part of that. And if we can hone that, listen to it, and entertain the consequences of our actions against that broader framework of why we're here and what we're aiming to do, then I think that actually puts us in a pretty good stead, that we can actually almost like operate under our own steam. And we can always come back to this bit in here and actually go, oh yeah, I'm getting a good feel of this. It feels like it's on, or it's not. And sometimes when we've got, we're none of us are perfect. We're always going to have, we're always going to have these maybe little needs, these desires and wants of experience and things like that. So it's, we're going to from time to time actually have this thing about going, oh man, that experience feels like it's exactly what I need to have. And that's going to be coming out of that part of us that just hasn't been fed. Yet the conscience will always be there to actually go, nah, better not. And it's how well have we honed that sort of internal compass so that we can actually go, oh man, that feels like it fulfills some needs in here, but you know what? I can't ignore the fact that there's a part of me that's just going, nah, not now. Either the timing's wrong, or it was never going to fulfill the need, and it's just something. It's just a carrot that's been dangled in front of me, but my conscience is telling me, no, it's either it's not now or it's not ever. So yeah, it starts to become a pretty important part. And so you can see that as we want to, and I reckon this is one of the greater challenges that we bounce around, is that as you start to align yourself to a leadership framework that's starting to look holistically at both the planet and us as a community, you can start to feel that the internal compass goes from self to the collective. And when the internal compass does that, it's a bit like some of the things in here that we may have wanted to feed are not going to get fed because it no longer actually sits in that alignment. So when we're doing more of that, prioritizing the collective over the self, we really need to hone this leadership conscience to actually go, yeah, am I in alignment with that, or am I still actually dealing with some things in here that might be feeling like they're the right step, but you can actually, if you really sit and ask yourself the question and do a bit of critical thinking and a bit of emotional intelligence with it all, you can actually see that it's not going to be the case at all. So yeah, man, it's all of these little building blocks coming together to start to give us far more of a feel of exactly what this alignment to the principles of eternal leadership start to look like.
Yeah Gosh, we don't have to go very far. We turn on the television or switch on our phone or whatever outlet of media that we have, and it doesn't take much to see those that have developed a healthy conscience, and also to see those that haven't developed a healthy conscience.
Yeah.
We look at some of the decisions that people have been making or oversee or oversight, that their decisions cause harm. They've obviously either not spent enough time developing their conscience, or either they've just overridden it time and time again, where it has just become this non-existent background type of experience within them. They may have even completely turned it off altogether. But gosh, it's it's a bit sad. It's a bit sad that we all have this amazing, wonderful tool within us called our conscience. And I would love to see our education system actually, spend considerable amount of time helping children to be able to get in touch with their conscience, develop their conscience in a really healthy and mature way. So by the time that they leave school, they've got this, as you said, they've got this really healthy, mature internal compass, which is going to help them to help them to be able to guide and navigate their way throughout life. And you know, and in those times where it's a bit of, oh, should I not, you know, just being able to have another tool on board within themselves to be able to go, yeah, that feels okay, or either, oh, that's questionable, I'm unsure, let's do some more research, or let's just wait a while, or either, nah, you better not, you know, just those real simple messages that our conscience delivers to us on a daily basis. I would love to see that developed more so in humanity, and it's certainly something that the education system could pick up.
Yeah.
But you know, going to our leaders, gosh, you know, I like you've been sharing with me, or sharing with us all, what a critical aspect for a leader to be able to have developed a healthy and mature conscience, not just because of how it can affect things on the global scale or the local environment, you know, whether it be, you know, the country or state that they live in or city, but, you know, how their internal conscience affects those within their team, how it affects themselves of, you know, as we know, if we make too many decisions that, you know, our conscience is leading us in one direction, but we override it, you know, we can tend to have a string or a whole bunch of experiences that become a bit challenging. And, you know, if we're not listening to, oh, hey, you know, I made a decision that went against my conscience, if we're not listening to, oh, well, that led to this experience and to that challenge and to this problem, if we're not listening to that, then we tend to, you know, stop listening to our conscience. Like, it's so important to be listening and guiding ourselves back to listening more to our conscience. So, you know, I would love to see our leaders to be really developing that in a really healthy way, and for the health and well-being of their own life, you know, for the health and well-being of the people that they lead in their teams or their projects or initiatives or businesses, whatever it happens to be. That one very simple thing has such a huge impact on every decision that gets made. Yeah.
It really feels to me like the conscience is like a bit of a clay mold type thing. You know, it's not a set in concrete type thing. It's something that we're always, you know, playing with and shaping and doing things, so you can, you know, have it developed in a whole range of different ways. But I suppose, you know, as we're bouncing this around more, is that what it's really emphasizing to me is that it's something that we're conscious, you know, that we're constantly working on, and you know, we're always looking for that feedback, and then, you know, being willing to work with it. So it, you know, it requires a fair bit of attention. It requires a fair bit of attention, and you know, it's also going to be, you know, that compass that actually says, you know, we might be working with half a dozen what feel like-minded organisations or initiatives that we're all coming together maybe to achieve a certain outcome, and you know, we may come to a point in, you know, in that relationship where it's the conscience that actually goes, oh, you know what, maybe our alignment's not where it once was. You know, maybe we need to take stock of this, and so we actually look, are we still in alignment? If we're out of alignment, is it something that we can actually bring ourselves back into alignment and continue to move forward, or maybe are we now out of that alignment to a point that actually we have to take different, you know, we have to take different courses. Each of, I suppose, you know, that's the sort of thing is that that internal compass of ours is that we're continuing to nurture and continuing to mold and you know, continuing to hone, so that we can actually have that aspect of us really attuned to some of these, you know, these greater goods. And I suppose then in the end, it can be, yeah, we have our own personal conscience, but, you know, it almost feels like you know, the entity that is our initiative, that is our business, which is the collective of everybody that's working in it. It almost like has its own conscience as well. So how do we keep nurturing that and keep honing it so that we can receive that feedback? Because really what we want, what we really want is we want to know when we're off, when we're off the mark. It's like, I'm going this way, I'm going this way. What you really want to know is to go, actually, maybe not this way.
Yeah.
And it's got to be honed to that point that we can listen to it and we can go, all right, well, let's go with that, and we'll find another solution or another approach or whatever. But it's going to be one of those things of always honing, but always considering the consequences of what we're choosing, and I think that seems to be a link. As soon as we want to experience the potential consequences of what a choice is, it's almost like that's the tip that actually goes, oh, let me check in here. What's the consequences of this choice? What's the consequences for the collective, for the initiative, for the people that I'm leading? What's the consequences for me? And some of the consequences might be not material. Some of the consequences might be, can I live with myself?
Yeah.
If I take this choice.
Yeah.
If I take everybody down this particular path, am I going to be able to live with myself for that? And it's great questions to ask. So there's all these different aspects of us that you can see that just as we start to hone this more and more, we can, we start to get these sorts of insights, and it starts challenging us on, what we value, and it's that point. We will often have this conversation, about the whole culture and values and all of that things, and everybody will articulate what their values are, but the best way to like get that, well, that's what you say your values are, but what are your values are best depicted in how you behave and what choices you make, and so again, that really well honed conscience is that bit that actually says, oh, you know what, this is out of alignment with what we're actually saying, what we value. And so, well, okay, let me work on that a little bit more and bring it in. So you can feel that there's got to be an appetite in there. It's got to be an appetite in there of being okay to be wrong. There's got to be an appetite in there for us to say, oh, you know what, I don't know everything, and I'm not going to get everything right. And by the same token, I'm not right 100% of the time. And if I'm attached to being right, well then, that's just as equally going to throw me off course than anything else. So how can I be okay with going, all right, let's go in this direction, and maybe even taking a couple of steps and going, oh, no, that's that's not even close. So let's just change course. So there's lots of things in there that we need to develop, and I suppose we just need to be okay with allowing ourselves to evolve. There you go. There's the term. That's what I was looking for. How do we allow ourselves to keep evolving? I just think the conscience is just such a fundamental part of alignment to evolution. And it's going to be that aspect of us that actually just tells us whether we're maintaining that alignment to evolution, whether we're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love how you put that. That's great. One of the things that I feel to build upon there is the whole thing of humility. If we're addicted to being right, well, that need to always be right is just going to override your ability to be able to receive or hear your own conscience. Yeah. Or if you might hear it or you might feel it, but the addiction to being right will just bypass it, and if that becomes your strongest main point of where you make a decision, that tends to where you'll go. And that's also the same of doubting oneself or not valuing oneself, or being wrong. It's like, oh no, I'll follow the direction of everyone else because I value everyone else's opinion more than my own. Even that particular view set will override one's ability to be able to hear and feel their own conscience as well. So that fine line of humility of not buying into the whole anything of right or wrong or good or bad, but just what actually feels to be the way forward in this moment. Okay, I'm going to put all of those right, wrong, good, bad things aside, and I'm just going to, what feels to be the highest ethical way forward here? What feels like to be the most loving, or the most the healthiest way forward for everyone concerned in this experience, in this moment? What a critical thing, being in humility.
Man. Can't be right and have a conscience, eh?
You're right about that.
It's such I really think it's such an important part of nurturing our own leadership, because we really do need to be open to that feeling. And I suppose that's the best scenario in there is that we're either considering making a choice, and we just allow ourselves to feel what it would be like if we did that. And it's it really does open us up, and I love all of the different things that we've touched on in there, but we can just see how important it is to nurture this aspect, so that we really can actually sit there and go, it might even be, that's going to be tremendous growth for our business. That's going to be a massive revenue windfall for us. It's going to make us so much more profitable and financially sustainable. And maybe that's the point that one of the things that we've been looking for out of an initiative, yet to do it we have to compromise something that just can't be compromised. And the honing and development of our internal compass, our conscience, will actually then go, listen, I know it's got all of that upside, but seriously, are we really prepared to, we're really prepared to compromise that aspect? Are we really prepared to compromise our ethics or the fundamental purpose upon which we're doing this thing? Remember why we're doing it. Remember. And is this really going to help evolution? This to me is something that's just so important. Whenever we're going to be in a position of being responsible for something, as soon as we're going to be responsible for something, it's actually asking us to value more than ourselves. And as soon as we're valuing more of ourselves, we're probably going to be in these sorts of situations where we do get conflicted by the personal benefit versus the collective benefit, and where do we hone it to the point of actually going, listen, I can feel the personal benefit that's in here, and it might be material benefit, but oh man, I can feel the consequence of that benefit. And what the consequence of that is just not, and it's just not worth choosing, even if there's somebody standing right beside you with maybe a business or an initiative in the same industry or the same field that you're doing, and they see that opportunity as well, and they're challenged with the conscience and the conflict and all of that, and yet they choose to do it, and they become the highly successful material and the highly financially viable and all of that, and yet they've actually had to compromise everything to do it. how are we going to be okay with that, to actually go, well, we forewent all of that, but you know what, I'm true in here, and the thing is is that we'll find other ways. And that, I love a lot of that, because that really challenges us to have an alignment to something bigger, and and know that maybe in this instance that's not what this is meant to be, but in other moments maybe it is. But it's our conscience that's going to give us that feel. It's going to be the feel that actually goes, yeah, okay, this feels like one, or it'll be the one that says, nah, we better not. Yeah. I love it. I love these points of conflict. I think that, to me, that's a lot of what we're doing here is actually going, the pursuit of an eternal focus of leadership is going to push us straight into this conflict, and that conflict is going to be the self over the collective. It's when you go back to probably the very first video that we did, when we spoke about the fundamental tenet of our economic system is self-interest. And this sort of thing, it actually gets us to the point of actually going, we need to confront this self-interest versus the collective interest. We need to confront the competition versus the collaboration. We need to confront ethics. We need to actually look at going, and I think this is probably, I suppose in my experience, and also what I see in some others, is that we can have these higher ideals. We can actually have this vision of saying, yeah, I'm actually going to do something that's better for the planet. I'm going to have to do something better for the collective. That's the way I want to be. But unless we're prepared to actually then come in and actually say, well, as a leader, I need to challenge proactively this self-interest versus the collective interest and all these other things. I need to hone all of these things. Otherwise, I'm going to be hit with a choice to either follow that collective good, or it'll be something that's going to feed this self-interest thing in me that I haven't touched, and I'm going to choose the self-interest thing. And invariably what we find is that we actually don't go off the mark by a massive leap. Normally we do these in a little 1%, a little decision that takes us a bit away, another little decision that takes us a bit away, another decision that takes us further, and before you know it, we're all the way out.
Yeah.
And it's all because we haven't proactively challenged the things that are actually standing in the way, or that are going to potentially derail us maintaining that eternal good. And it really does challenge us to confront these sorts of things. And I have to say, that's what I love about the leadership journey. I really love that aspect of it. And I realize it's possibly not for everybody, but it's a really important aspect. And when we're wanting to do some of these initiatives that are more sustainable and better for the planet, I think it's one of the things that we just really get confronted on, and we have to have the support around us to actually, maybe just give us a quick nudge and actually go, really? Is that really the way you want to go? And I suppose, from a healthy leadership perspective, sometimes you actually have to be prepared to hear that from your team members.
Yeah.
Sometimes your team members are going, really, is that the right direction for us? We all signed up to this sort of thing, and it feels like we need to be going in that direction. And this decision feels like it's taking us a bit over here. And then, you come back to the humility thing you were talking about earlier on, is that how much work have we done on ourselves to prepare ourselves to lead in that, so that we can actually hear that sort of feedback from one of our team members. And rather than us sitting back and going, well, no, I'm right because I'm the leader, maybe it's that point where I actually go, you know what, if I really check in here, and if I really check in with the conscience is sitting there going, hey, damn right, buddy. So am I prepared to hear that? And am I prepared to, keep developing and keep learning and that with it? And that being right all the time, as I think it's a real leadership trap. It's a real leadership trap of needing to be seen, to be right all the time. It's such a limitation, such a limitation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can hear the leaders out there going right now, yeah, you're right. I agree.
Yeah.
Gosh, you know, what you just shared is so very powerful. I reckon there's an enormous amount in there for every single person that, you know,
Yeah.
gets this far in the video or the podcast.
If you've managed to get this far in.
If they haven't got bored with us yet. But gosh, there's so much in that. So, you know, like rich with amazing learning and lessons. And, you know, we can all get an enormous amount out of that. You know, there was a lot in that for me. I reckon, you know, everyone can relate to it in many, many different ways on many different levels. So, you know, one of the things that sort of, you know, popped through since we've been chatting about this is relative to the whole conscience thing. You know, how many people that have been focused on power, profit, and prestige actually genuinely live a healthy and mature life? How many of them genuinely are healthy within their whole being within themselves, and how mature are they able to bring themselves to the world and to their life? And in my experience, I've worked with a lot of really wealthy people. I've had been friends with a lot of wealthy people that have been that way inclined, and I've been exposed to. And I've got to say that, you know, and this is no disrespect to any of them, because, you know, they're all wonderful people, but very, very, very few of them, and I can't even think of one right now in this moment, that has actually genuinely lives a really healthy life, a whole healthy life, and isn't able to be able to bring themselves to their own life and to others in a really healthy, mature way. You know, yes, they might have a lot of materialistic things within their life that might be really high, you know, on their particular spectrum of being important. They might have the house and the car and the family and the this and the that and the blah, blah, you know, they've got all these, yet really unhealthy in the way that they treat themselves, and how their behavior is and their attitude, and how they, you know, bring themselves to other people, and how they treat other people and their community, and overriding the need that our community and our environment needs a lot of attention and care and love and so forth. You know, just a few different examples, but you know, you know, and I really feel that, you know, being exposed to many of these people over the years, if they had developed and listened to their conscience, they would have developed a much healthier experience of life. They still would have been successful with, you know, the materialistic things, but maybe not to a high degree, but they would have balanced all those other areas of their life out, where, you know, where they care about themselves, you know, the well-being of their own self, and how they actually experience life in a healthy way, how they're able to bring themselves to other people, how they're able to support and nurture other people in their life, and, you know, their environment and their, you know, the culture that they live in and the people around them and so forth. All these many building blocks that constitute a whole healthy and mature life. You know, I feel that fundamentally that conscience really helps us to be able to develop each of these healthy foundations within our life. And, you know, you know, once upon a time, you know, in a previous business that I had started, it started out with all good intent, and, you know, we're doing great things in the world, and I started to earn a whole lot of money myself. And I get how easy it can become to, you know, to have become focused on, oh, wow, this is really good, earning lots of money, and I can get to do all these things that I've never been able to do before. I can actually go on a holiday, or I can buy either this or that or whatever. And in that experience, I really get how you can become blindsided to or not listening to your conscience. I get it. I really, really understand that. And I feel that it's like you were saying, it's those little 1% that sort of, build up to not listening to one's conscience. But at least in my experience, I got to a point where wow, gosh, I've got this and I've got that and I'm doing this and I'm doing that and blah, 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 all the, ticking all the boxes. And some of it was really genuinely fulfilling, such as the family thing and the children thing and so forth. And gosh, chasing the money, that just did not bring happiness or fulfillment or health or well-being or maturity into my life at all. Not one single bit. There was a point where I was like, wow, it doesn't mean anything. It helps to be able to pay for the things that I like to do, but this is not it. This is not it. So, you go through the process of unpacking, well, how did I get to this point? And so much of it just comes back to just not listening to those internal guidance things that we all have within us, such as our conscience, such as a healthy self-esteem, such as, the health and well-being of how you think and feel and so forth. It's I get it, but there's a healthier way forward. And listening to our conscience is just a wonderful way to be able to stay on track. In the context of what you're most prioritized in your life, what you're aligned to. Well, my priorities are that I want to go here. That's what I'm aligned to. And that's what I feel like is if it's in alignment with my internal guidance system, my conscience, okay, I'm going to listen to this to help me to go in that direction. We've all got it there. It's an internal tool. We don't have to open up a spreadsheet or open up an app to figure this stuff out. We've all got it on board.
Indeed.
We've all got on board, but yeah. Critical aspect to have developed when we're responsible, not just for ourselves. We're supposed to be responsible for ourselves, but responsible for other people, leading others.
Hey, can we just take a pause?
Yep.
Because I've just looked at my laptop. Yeah, I reckon everything you've touched on there is really, it's just really important. But one of the things that I also want to throw in there is that we're not about actually saying if you're not following this way, like the eternal way of doing it, that you're wrong. Because there's just so many different ways to do all this. And all of these principles can be applied to any business or any initiative that you want to do or any way you want to lead. So
yeah,
you can do that. But I suppose the important thing, and I think that was what was really resonating with me as you were sharing, it is that the development of conscience and ethics and alignment and all of that is absolutely crucial if we're actually going to follow a more eternal focus of leadership. And I think that's the thing that was really coming home to me then was to go, these are all really, really important aspects if we are going to challenge ourselves to focus on some of these more eternal aspects. And I mean, and equally, we can apply a lot of these principles to, for-profit businesses that are out there to dominate a market. You can equally apply all of these sorts of these principles and approaches to leadership to any initiative that you're running. And one of the things that it will start to do, and I think, what I really loved about what you were sharing there, Nathan, was that a lot of the times we're going to go out there and we're going to be working our butts off, and we're going to be trying to be what we probably term as successful. And the other really great aspect of a conscience is the conscience is always going to be sitting there and actually going, you might have the big salary, you might have the big home, and you might have everything like that, but you're miserable, aren't you? And it's like, and I certainly had those sorts of experiences of having the jobs that I wanted to have, and the salaries that I couldn't imagine that I was actually getting, and it was like, yeah, but you know what? There was always this bit of me in here that was actually going, it's a bit like cold, cold, not even close to warm, let alone hot. It's, you're not there. And it's like, man, if we continue to hone our conscience, which for me feels really closely aligned to like our pillars of self-esteem and those aspects as well. If we start to, entertain honing and nurturing and developing our conscience, and actually allowing that to be our compass that tests whether we're actually in alignment with what's really important to us, I suspect we're probably at risk of actually leading a more fulfilled and more purposeful life. So, that aspect can't be lost on it as well, because in many instances, these, when we talk the eternal thing, that's more of what we're aligned to. It's going to be this thing that the best way to nurture and feed our eternal self is to actually be aligned to something that's more eternal in nature, and actually, focusing on evolution. When we're doing that, when we're investing all of our time and energy in that, we're actually pursuing that, we're more inclined to actually be better fulfilled as a result of it as human beings. So there's certainly a link there. But I suppose the other thing I would just add to that is by no means would I sit here also and actually judge anybody for doing in another way. I wish we could actually get away from this. This separation of those that have a lot and the growing base of ones that don't have much, because it seems to be our global, especially in the West, it seems to be that, we used to have this middle class type thing. And that seems to have little top of it splitting off and coming up, and the rest, everybody being pushed back down. And now we're getting to this thing. There's a lot that have got a lot. There's a few that have got a lot, and a lot that don't have anything. And it's just like, I don't think we've hit the mark with that. I think we need to do things a little differently. So, hopefully we can move some of that. But certainly if we're going to be working with ones that are more, aligned to some of these more eternal approaches and wanting to explore that, well then, these aspects, especially the nurturing and development of conscience, is absolutely critical, because each of us need a compass that we can rely upon, that we know that is actually going to help us to go, well, you know what, the consequence of that choice is actually not something we can live with, or the consequence of that choice is actually not in alignment with evolution. And the consequence of that choice maybe is in alignment with what we're trying to do with the initiative or the good of the people that we're working with. And we need to be able to hear that. We need to be able to take that on board and actually go, oh man, okay. All right, well, we better look for something else. We better, find another solution. If we can do a bit more of that, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, a few things that I sort of feel to share out of that. That's great. Fantastic. I just wonder, look, huge disclaimer here. I'm no psychologist, but I'll throw my 2 cents into the ring anyway, see what happens. I wonder I've spent, like I've said in previous episodes, I've spent a lot of time over the years, for many years, studying self-esteem.
Yeah.
And conscience and self-esteem are closely linked, of course. But I really do wonder if we had all left school. So let's say the school system had helped us to develop a healthy and mature conscience. How much? So by the time we leave school, how much? How that would have reduced our mental health problems here in this country and also around the world. How much that would reduce the poverty and disease and all of the lower aspect fundamental problems in our society, not just here in Australia, but across the planet, really, just by, if we had all learned to be able to listen and follow our conscience of, navigating our way through life. I'm not saying that those things wouldn't exist. I'm not saying that at all, just for those that are, wanting to throw darts at me in this moment. But, I do wonder, I do wonder from time to time that if these fundamental aspects within us that we all have were nurtured and developed in a really healthy way when we're growing up, how they would impact and influence our society today. My gut feel is that it would be a different planet.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. Be a different planet.
Yeah.
Something so easy that could be tweaked within our society, which could have profound effects within a generation or two on the whole planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, honing of a well-balanced, well-aligned conscience feels like it's a pretty damn important leadership aspect.
Yeah. Climate change doesn't exist. There's nothing wrong with the planet. Are you blind? Yeah. Yeah. Just on that, we don't have to go very far to look at the value and the benefit of when we put the collective good of all before ourselves. Now, remember back in I think it was the 80s or the 70s and 80s, where there's all this scientific evidence out there to show that the ozone hole in the ozone layer was getting bigger.
Yeah, it was all about the ozone layer, wasn't it?
Yeah, but then collectively, as a planet, our leaders at that time, at least some of them that were in roles of responsibility and decision making, came together on this whole ozone hole thing, and they agreed not to use certain aerosols on the planet anymore. They came together for the collective good, and they made a change. And what did we see within 10 or 15 years, or whatever that duration was, maybe 20 years or something?
Yeah, it really didn't take long.
Yeah, the ozone hole has now healed.
Yeah.
Something so simple and so obvious, that people were coming from this greater good of following their conscience and coming together and working together for the greater good, has profound effects on all of society. It's also a bit like, I also might get some more daggers thrown at me for saying what I'm about to say. So good thing that I'm on the other side of a screen. We look at what Putin did in Russia. He had a pretty tough role when he took on his job, when he first became president. And he started to redistribute the wealth within the country. He started to get the wealthy to be able to invest back into the poor, into the middle class, and he's been able to raise their economic growth and also, being able to raise the poor and the middle class up into higher states of health and well-being within their, how they experience life over there in Russia. And gosh, wonderful example of being able to look out for the health and well-being for their population. And again, this whole Xi Jinping, over in China, has gone from wealth creation, is now starting to have a focus on a common prosperity. Now, I'm no expert on the details about how he's going to go about that yet. He's again going to the super wealthy in China and saying, hey, you need to, by law, start putting your money, donating or investing it back into the health and well-being of the population to help to raise it up. Now, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing if this was just a common way we all lived our life here in the world? Everyone's supporting each other. The super rich don't need to be super rich. They can be rich, but just invest it back into helping to raise everyone up. Again, just real common understanding from the perspective of our conscience. Plus, it feels pretty good. It feels pretty good. Anyway, I'll stop throwing disclaimers out there now for this episode at least.
Yeah, conscience is good. Conscience helpful.
Yeah.
Let's nurture and develop ours.
Awesome.